Alright guys, welcome back. And we're just going to continue off from where we left off. So in the last case what we had was something that looked like this. If I set the speed now to 1, it just starts moving forward, just like we expected to. So moving forward. The next thing we want to tackle with is we're going to jump and we're just going to look at the slide right and the slide left, okay? Because that's very similar to what we did for moving forward, okay? Now, when we wanted to move the car forward every frame, we were using transform.translate, and we said that we wanted to move it in the z direction, and therefore we were giving it a value of so. Now, before me even coding, you can imagine that when we want to move the car right and left, you can imagine that we need to move the x-coordinate now. Essentially what's going to happen is the car is going to be moving forward every frame on its own, but the user is going to be controlling when it moves right and left, okay? Now, of course, we need to do some of the logic before moving it right and left. We need to check, well, hey, which key is the user pressing, and can it move? And so I move back over here into the code. Now, in order to slide right, here's what we need to do. We need to check if the user is pressing the right key and it can move, okay? What do I mean by that? What I mean is, well, first of all, we need to check if the user is pressing the right arrow key so that the car moves to the right. And at the same time, we need to make sure that the car is in lane number 0 or lane number -1. If it's already in the rightmost lane, then we should not allow the car to move to the right. However, if it is in the middle lane or if it's in the leftmost lane, then the car can move to the right. Okay, so over here, the way we check which key the user has pressed in Unity is something like so. Inside my if statement, right, it's kind of like general English language. We want to check, hey, if the right key is pressed and the current lane is 0 or the current lane is -1. So if the current lane is the middle lane or the current lane is the leftmost lane, then we come over here, okay? So to get the key input, here's what we do. Input.getKeyDown. So this checks if the key has been pressed. If you hover over it, it says returns true during the frame the user starts pressing down the key identified. So input.getKeyDown will return true as soon as I start pressing the right key or whatever key that you want. So for example, if you want to move right with the D key, because the right key is a little bit irritating, so we can have keycode.d, and it's going to move right when the user presses right. And it checks, is the current lane 0? Is it in the middle? Or is it -1? Is it on the leftmost one? And in both of those cases, if this is the case, then it starts playing this logic. Now, inside it, we've also used transform.translate, but the way we've used it is something like this. I just specified a float.amount to move, simply because I wanted to move 3 units to in whichever direction. So basically, if I'm at unit an x value of, let's say, 0, then I wanted to either move 3 units on the right or 3 units on the left, and so on and so forth. So what I do is I do transform.translate new vector 3 times amount to move. Now this is almost exactly what we did. Of course, I've used a slightly different notation, but here's what we're saying, okay? We want to translate it, and if you hover over translate one more time, and if you read over, it says it moves the transform in the direction and distance of the translation, okay? So translate requires a vector, and that vector just justifies both the direction and the distance. So just like we did previously, when I want to move it, I want to move it in the x direction, right? We don't want to move the car up. We don't want to move the car, well, not yet anyways, and we don't want to move the car in the z direction. We just want it to move in the x direction, okay? So I make a new vector, and I just give it 1, 0, 0. So that means I give it an x value of 1, because that's I want it to move in the x-axis, and I give it 0 and 0 for y and z. Okay, so x equals 1, y equals 0, z equals 0. And then, since I said that I want the car This is just me personal preference because when I was testing the road and so on and so forth and the different resolutions, this just seemed to be a good number. Depending on your resolution, depending on your type of game or your screen, etc., or what you're aiming for, you might want to have it a little bit more, a little bit less. It also depends on the size of your assets and the roads and everything. But at the moment, I just used 3 because I just wanted it to move 3 units to the right and 3 units to the left, okay? So I said, okay, translate it in, the amount to move distance. And what did I say? I said, well, okay, 1 for the x. Okay, so I hope that kind of makes sense what I'm trying to say. Another thing I want you to know is that when the car is moving right, okay, whether it's in the middle or whether it's on the leftmost one, you see the distance is always being added. So let's say if the x is minus 1.5 and I move it 3 units to the right, then I'm adding it 3 units and I'm still adding it 3 units. Similarly, you can already think that when you want to move the car left, then you're going to be subtracting the amount to move. The distance, it says the direction and the distance, so you can imagine leaving amount to move the same, but maybe just having this as a -1, as you'll see later on. But we'll get to that in a minute. One more thing I want to do is I want to increase the current lane. So what am I doing here? What I'm doing is I'm increasing the lane that it currently is in. So I'm saying if it's in lane, let's say -1, and if I press the right key, then I move it to 0. And when I press the right key, if I'm in the middle lane, then I update the lane to 1. And now if I press the right key, well, I just don't allow the user to press the right key. When the current lane is 1, then we simply do not enter this part of the code. Okay, so it only runs this code if and only if our car is in the middle lane or if it's in the leftmost lane. Okay, so that prevents my current lane index from increasing and going out of bound. Okay, not exactly an index, but what I mean to say is my integer can only have those 3 values. When you press right in the rightmost lane, it's not going to run this line of code. It's never going to make your current lane 2, for example. That's just not going to happen, and I hope you understand what I mean by that. Okay, this was, again, me animating it, so just ignore that. We're not doing that at the moment. And that's how I move the car right. Okay, let's look at slide left. Okay, it's the same logic, except the other way around. I'm going to make this from left arrow. I'm going to make it key code A, because that's just more convenient. And I'm checking, is the car in the middle lane or the rightmost lane? Okay, so if the car is here, I can move left. If it's in the middle lane, I can move left. If it's already in lane number -1, then it should not be able to go left. So all I'm checking is, hey, before I move left, I want to know, is the user pressing the A button? And is the user in the current lane 1 or current lane 0? So is the user in the rightmost lane or is he in the middle lane? Okay, so that's what this if statement here is doing. If the user is pressing the A button and it's in either the middle lane or the rightmost lane, that's when I will run this code logic. Okay, so once again, the amount I want to move is the same. Okay, even in the leftmost direction. Even when the user wants to go left, the only thing I need to change here is the direction. So here's what I do: transform.translate. I have the same amount to move. It's just that the direction in which I want to now move is -1. So this is going to cause the car to go like so. So when the user is on x equals 0, for example, x equals 0, then when I do transform.translate, it's going to go snap over 0 minus 3, and it's going to end up over here. And then when the user presses right, it's going to go -3 plus 3 is going to go back to 0. And then if he presses right, it's going to go 0 plus 3, and it's going to go over here. So this platform might be a little bit too small. So I'm going to go ahead and just try to increase the size of this platform. Like so. Okay. And I'm going to move our car back over here like so. Okay. So, and what I do is I decrement the current lane. Similarly, which is just the exact opposite of me incrementing it. So what I'm trying to say is if the user presses the leftmost button, then you decrement the lane. So if he's in the rightmost lane, that is, if he's in lane 1, then decrement it and move him to lane 0. If he's in lane 0, and if he presses the left button, move him to lane -1. But if he's in the lane -1, then he will. If he presses the left key, then it's just not going to enter this, because it's going to come here and it's going to check that, okay, look, is the current lane 0 or 1? That's going to be false, because the current lane will be, in this case, -1, and it's just not going to work. So it's not going to come over here in this logic. So that's how we're moving the car left and right. And if you've been following me so far, that if you save and if you move over to your, and if you run your software, what am I saying? If you run your game, let's just make the camera like so. Sorry, I'm just a little exhausted right now, that's all. Let's just move it like so. And now when I play it, I'm gonna increase the field of view and move him back a little bit. Now when I press the D key, he moves right, and so. Now I'm in the leftmost lane, and when I press A again, it's not moving. And when I press D again, it moves to the right, and it moves to the right. Now, if you're wondering why it's not going forward, it's because over here in the taxi, I put the speed 0, so it doesn't fall off. But rest assured that it works. But yeah, so things seem to be working all right. We need to work on our jump functionality, but things seem to be coming along quite well. Okay, so let's very quickly, how am I doing on time? So 11 minutes, not so bad. Very quickly, let's look at how we are doing the jump logic. Now, this is where we need the rigid body. Very quickly, before I go on to the jump thing, some of you might be wondering, oh, hey, look, what happened to time.delta time? Why am I not using it? Well, you remember how I said that you use time.delta time when you want smooth motion? That's exactly why I'm not using time.delta time over here. Notice the motion of the car. I'm going to, once again, okay, let me just move the camera perspective kind of back. Okay, so notice the movement right and left. You see how it's snappy? It's literally warping from one place and appearing on the other. There is no smooth transitioning, okay? And this is not, you know, a coincidence. This is something that I purposely did, okay? So simply because I want the car movement right and left to be snappy, I didn't want it to be slow and lethargic, and I didn't want a smooth transition. I really just kind of wanted to make it like the original game. That's why I did it. If you feel in your game or in your project, if you need your character or car or whatever you're programming, if it needs to move slowly, then by all means use time.delta time. I would encourage you to even try. But that's why I didn't use time.delta time over here. Now, I want to quickly move on to the jump logic, okay? So let's see. Yeah, what am I looking for? Yes. Okay, so jump. Jump logic is where we are going to be using our rigid body. The reason why I decided to do that is, well, let's just see. First of all, in order to jump, I need to check, is the person pressing the up arrow, or in this case, I'm going to change it to key code W. So is the person pressing the W key? And then the next thing I need to do is I need to check, can he jump? Remember how we talked about how we wanted to prevent the user from, you know, flying and doing multiple jumps? So this is where that comes in. So as soon as we jump, can jump becomes false, okay? Something like that. So what I check is, can the user jump, and is he pressing the W key? If both of those are true, if he is pressing the W key and he can jump, then I can allow him to move. Now, if you look here in the commented section, I actually initially I was jumping using transform.translate, okay, and it worked. But this is not exactly the kind of motion I was looking for. I wanted him to jump a little bit under gravity, in the sense that when I was using transform.translate, even with a time smoothing, then the movement did not look realistic, and I wanted the car to have a bit of a parabolic jump situation. So that's why I decided to use the rigid body dot velocity. Now this is a good way actually of making things move even right and left. So this way right here, this is one of those situations which if I went back and if I was to recode the game at some point in time, then I would do the right and the left movement also by rigid body dot velocity, and instead of the y over here. So over here, what I'm doing is I'm changing the velocity of the rigid body. Okay, so our object, we added a rigid body component to it, which, if you remember, allowed the game object to have gravity and allowed the physics engine to work on our game object. Okay, so physics engine basically means, you know, mass, drag, angular drag, speed, velocity, acceleration. So with the rigid body, you get all of these little rigid body dot velocity, rigid body dot angular velocity, and so on and so forth. All these physics functions come in. So what I'm doing here is I'm making it jump in the not in the x, because we don't want it to move in the jump in the x direction. We don't want it, it's already moving in the z direction by translate. It's already moving in the x direction with the A and D key by translate. But I was making him jump with rigid body dot velocity. Okay, I was just changing. I was giving it a velocity in the upward direction. It's kind of like adding a force. So when you add a force onto something, kind of like F equals to ma type situation, where you add a force onto an object, and I believe there's also a rigid body dot add force. So rigid body dot add force, as you can see. So it says it adds a force to the rigid body. So that's kind of what I'm doing, except I was just directly altering its velocity. And I was giving it just a random number of 15. This was just something which worked for my game. And of course, I was playing around with the gravity settings. So when I jump now, I think the jump will be extremely huge, simply because of the gravity settings. But we'll see what that looks like. But I hope you understand what I mean. I want you to try this yourself and see what kind of emotion you get. And also you can try to use time.delta time and see if that is something that works for you. But I was just kind of experimenting and tweaking, because that's what game development really is. It's endless amounts of tweaking. And I changed this at a very late level in development. So for the longest time, I was using this just to be coherent, because I was using transform.translate for all of them. But at a very late stage, I changed this to get the kind of, what do you call it, that parabolic motion that I was looking for. So that's why I was doing that. One thing that I want to check is when I set can jump to false, where exactly am I changing it back? That's the only thing I want to check. And we will be done for this tutorial. So, can jump, let's look at it. Yeah. So later on, at a later instance, I'll get back to it. But on collision enter, what I'm doing later on is at the moment what I do is when he's jumping, I make can jump false. I say that while he is jumping, while the user is jumping, he can no longer jump again. But later on collision enter, when the car collides with the floor again, so it jumps, you cannot press the up key and jump again. So it's false, 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 false. As soon as you collide with the floor on collision enter, I make the can jump boolean true again, therefore allowing the user to jump. Now, if you're a little bit confused about where I came up with on collision enter, then just hang in there, and I will explain it in the next video. For now, what you could do is you could entirely just remove can jump or comment it out, and you can remove this. Or you can quickly just go on collision enter and you can just put in your can jump variable and make it true. Either ways, I think this is it for this tutorial, so I'm going to save it and let's just go over to our editor and see what it looks like. So we have the right and left, and now I'm going to press W. Before I press W, I just want to say I think it's going to make a huge jump. Hopefully it jumps, but yeah. Okay, so there you go, and it's gone. Let's just kind of zoom out. This is in the scene view. Let's press W again, and boom. So you're probably wondering, well, hey, it's not what it looked like in your game. Well, of course, yes, because I went over here at one point in time, and let's see, project settings and physics, and I was playing around with the gravity here. So at the moment, the gravity is 9.81 negative. but in my game, I think it was like 3 or 4 times this. And you're probably wondering, hey, why are you just changing the gravity, and why aren't you just reducing this number? Well, yes, I tried both of those, and I came at a let's just say I came to a medium point in between both of those, which seemed to work fine for my game because as you can see, this is too little now. So at the moment, I'm gonna make it 5, let's say, because that works all right with the current setup. So yeah, so game development is just about endless amount of tweaking. As you can see, you can move right and left while you're jumping. Now, as you can see, the jumping motion is still a little bit lethargic, but that's okay for now. Just to show you the whole thing in action, let me just go ahead and move the. Let me just go ahead and move this. Let me give it a road, and let's try and hit play and see what happens. So I'm gonna increase the speed of the taxi to, let's say, 5, and you can see that it's moving, and I can move right and left, and I can jump. Now, of course, our camera isn't following that, but we'll get to that, okay? But for now, I think this is going to be enough, and I will see you in the next video.